Thank you so much for joining us here.
I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, we to have an Oscar winner on this stage with us here at Rhode Island Comic Con. We get a lot of celebrities.
Oscar, one-time winner and four-time loser.
Four-time nominee, and maybe, you know, the judging that year is off. I look at it that way tonight. You know, let's start off talking a little bit about Thelma and Louise, because when that film was made, and the fact that it had with so many people, over the years, that Thelma and Louise, the name, has become kind of a brand, in that, you know, if you have a couple of women who feel very empowered, they'll say, we are Thelma and Louise. It's become something that, you know, women have pride in and so forth. Since the film was made, there's been, you know, we've had the Me Too movement, we've had, you know, some harassment issues in the workplace. We have discussions about, you know, what makes a woman even in this era. All these years later, what does that film and the impact that it continues to have mean to you?
Well, first of all, when we made the film, we had no idea that we were doing anything but making basically a cowboy movie with trucks and women instead of cowboys and horses. And I was just so happy to be able to work with a woman, because usually in films, if there are two women, one's older, one's younger, they just hate each other just because. There's no reason, but that's just the way they set things up. So the fact that we could do a film, I love that you're knitting during this. Are you making a scarf?
It's gonna be a shawl. So.
A shawl?
Yeah.
She made this.
Very nice.
She made this.
Yeah.
One of my sons is an avid knitter.
Yeah.
I have a lot of hats that don't fit. He's not here right now, but he did go to school in this town.
This is what happens when you sit in front.
Anyway, we, you know, just started out to have a good time. By the time the movie came out, there was, I don't know, some of you people are old enough to remember that there was a big backlash against the film, actually. Nobody was quite sure why, but, you know, they were saying that it had encouraged suicide, which they definitely didn't say for Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid. They said that it was hateful towards men, and I think really it only were men with an exorbitant amount of jewelry. I don't think it was an installment. And we really didn't foresee that it was going to have that kind of a response, but we had backed into territory held by white heterosexual men, and didn't expect there to be that kind of a response. So it was kind of shocking to all of us. And now, I mean, it's been used in a different way. I think that it's been really great to have conversations about different subjects. When it first came out, the rape was not even mentioned. I mean, the reference to some kind of a rape was very, very quiet. So it has gained more political clout than was ever probably intentioned, especially by Ridley Scott. But even we, you know, just by the fact that it was women instead of men became a big deal. But the actual romanticized thing of, you know, going off a cliff rather than going to jail, we have Ridley to thank for making that up. I never could figure out how that was going to be a fun moment, but he managed to suspend the car and have that great music, so we didn't get depressed. And I think now, you know, it would be interesting to find out if you took that film to colleges, because there was a lot of discussion on colleges, not so much recently because we have so many other things to worry about, but how have times changed? Where would the support group be? Could you report a rape and be listened to? Questions like that, I don't know how much things have changed systemically. I mean, the conversation has changed, but I'm not sure that the law has really caught up. Did you make your hat?
She made it.
That's okay.
Yeah. Isn't she great?
discussing was about the impact of the theme of the movie towards an audience. What did the film and the casting of it mean for both of you as actresses? Because as actresses, roles like that really weren't that prevalent. And where you were strong, where you were empowered, where you stood up against the man, literally and figuratively. And it must have been a role that you really realized in the moment that this is something special. If not the reaction with the audience.
I just honestly thought it would be fun. And the casting of some of those people made it even better than what the script was. I mean, Brad Pitt, for instance, improvised so much, well, especially in the bedroom, but also and, you know, all the teasing of the husband, a lot of that stuff was all improvised. A lot of what Gina and I did was improvised. So I love stories, telling stories that are love stories. Everything I've ever done I see as a love story. And also, I like to have a good time. And I drag my children everywhere. And so we had a very nice summer doing that film. In Utah, not in the Grand Canyon, where unfortunately those cars are still at the bottom of the ravine, which is environmentally horrible. So I just thought it would be fun, and we had no idea that it would turn out to be, what it was. Ridley's an amazing filmmaker, and the script was massaged a lot in different places as we went on, and so it was kind of a work in progress, but there was no indication. When you start a project, you have to just do it. I hate to use the word process, or you have to just do it because of what's going to happen, like life, at that moment, and not do it in hopes that it turns out to be something else, and not for fear of it being something else. And so, we were the two women in a sea of all these guys that were shirtless with their t-shirts around their heads, going up and down mountains, and Gina and I worried for a moment that we would just be a voiceover because it was so gorgeous, and every day going to the set at sunrise and coming home at sunset, they were just filming everything, and we were sure that we would end up just being some kind of a voiceover telling the story with these incredibly gorgeous shots, because really, the one thing I didn't want to do that I told Ridley was I wasn't interested in a revenge film. So when people say it's standing up against the men, for me, that character was trying to understand why men think that's a good idea. To say those things, to do those things, why? I wasn't interested in making a film that was about revenge. I don't like those films. I don't like violence as an answer to anything. And so when it was indicated that they jumped up and down and celebrated blowing up the truck, which I think was one of the main reasons Ridley did the film, I didn't want to do that. I don't think she killed that guy on purpose. I think there's a line after she shoots him that says, keep your mouth shut or something like that. I think she was trying to just shut him up. I didn't like the idea that in the script it said she takes a stance and kills him, first of all, like a policeman, kind of. I didn't like that at all. So for me, it was an accidental shooting of her just living back this horrible experience that she had, and trying to shut him up because of the things he's saying at that moment that are so heinous. I'm against the death penalty, I'm against violence of any kind. So it didn't in any way seem like, we were suddenly the female Arnold Schwarzeneggers who were kind of charging into the future. It was a love story between those women. It was the kind of metamorphosis that Gina's character goes through because of her new relationship with her friend. It was funny, hopefully. It was also kind of interesting to see Harvey's character trying to push against what he could feel is going to be a really horrible ending for these women. And it's a romantic story because it's that same thing like Butch Cassidy, or rather than be contained, rather than go to prison, rather than have all that. And I said to Ridley, how much time has gone on, because it wasn't in the script, to get to the point. You know, it can't be 3 months, because then you're not going to think going off a cliff is a good idea. It has to be like 2 weeks of no sleep, you know, all the stuff that's going on, and in this moment they make that decision, and luckily you don't see it, so it's not too horrible. So maybe they're in Club Med, who knows, at this point where they've gone. It was taken later as something that was against men, but I think that, but I don't think it's about their liberation more than against men, and I think she's trying to understand that. When she says, we added some lines, and would you say that to your mother, would you say that to your sister, would you? Trying to understand how that seems like a good idea, and what social conditioning leads boys to grow up to be men who need to be saying those things because of their lack of confidence. You know, real men don't have to say those kind of things. They don't. They protect women, and we need men to protect us and to understand us and to see us, and we need to see them. So I don't see it as a film that was up against guys. I think I said enough.
But what you were saying is very interesting, leading into my next question here, is that there is a strength in your character, but in Gina Davis's book, by the way, I'll give her a plug here. Gina Davis has a memoir out called Dying of Politeness, and she talks at length about your relationship, the two of you in this film. And you mentioned a moment ago about pushing back against what something Ridley Scott wanted to do. And there's one of the themes in Gina's book is about how she felt that she was very too polite, too nice, too shy. And she found a great inspiration in you as a real life person to encourage her to push back on things. And she mentioned one anecdote in here about where at one point you're driving along the road in the film, and Ridley wanted her to lift up her blouse and show the
He wanted her to change her t-shirt. We'd have different versions of the story. This is my version. We were doing a shot where we were in the car, we were mic'd, which I forgot about. We were mic'd. We drove off, and then, you know, they tell you over your walkie that you're going to drive. But Ridley had said to her, why don't you change your t-shirt as you're driving, as I'm driving? But do it sitting up on the seat so we can see you. And without a bra. And we drove away, and when we got to where we were supposed to go, Gina said, do you think this is exploitative or something like that? And I said, well, can you think of any reason why you'd be sitting up on the back of the chair to change your top? Actually, and I forgot that he could hear what we were saying. So when we got, and so she didn't do it. And so when we pulled in, they had broken for lunch and sent everybody away, and he said, just thanks a lot, sorry. But I think hers version is slightly different, but that's basically what it was.
Yours wasn't bad. Yours wasn't bad. In terms of, you know, there's another scene about when you shoot the gas tank, and you can only do it one time, and there were multiple camera shots, and you're supposed to react to it, but it didn't quite work out, at least.
No, well, first of all, they cleared 2 miles to blow up this truck, except we're right there. I have small children. I was like, there's not even a camera on us, it's in the back. Put the doubles in, you know, everybody else has gone to safety, and the 2 of us are standing there dumb. Put the camera behind us, so he put the camera in front of us. That's how we solved that problem. And the only thing about that was, like I said, I didn't feel that in the script it indicated that they jump up and down and celebrate. And we added those lines with the truck, would you say that, something about like your mother's sister or whatever. And so when they did it, I just didn't jump up and down. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But the 2 anecdotes that you've just given, you're showing a point where you're expressing your view, which you'd like the director not to do it.
Well,
And it's not always the
she
case.
makes it sound like, that I was always like bossy. And what I do is I ask questions. Do we need this? Where are they going? Trying to understand specifically what's going on. I don't go in and say, I think it has to be this. The process that I like, which I do in all my films, is a collaboration. But Gina just never was used to saying or doing anything, so she thought that was like really revolutionary. But it's just a process I'm trying to create. If you're, trying to flush out a script, it's your job as an actor to make it as specific as possible. If it doesn't say, like I said, really, where are they coming from? It doesn't say in the script, because we have to have an accent. And he said, well, just use your accent. I was like, this is New York. This is not a Southern accent. So we had to decide things like where they were coming from, how long they were on the road, all these different things. But it wasn't that I told him it had to be something specific, but I think it's our job, and the fun of it really is to ask a lot of questions all the time, and then you come up with business. And I was so sick of driving that car and lining up where the camera was on the truck between her and the rear view mirror, and we got nominations. This is how you act without knowing that you're acting. You're trying to get a fucking car lined up with a camera that's on a truck. And so at some point I just say, can't we stop the driving, at some point, and just put a scene that's like a little grace note where she realizes at the end, takes off her jewelry and gives it away, eventually her watch, because she realizes that, which also is different than a male film, she feels that she has to pay the price for taking a life, which is not what happens in most revenge films. So she doesn't think, and when we said we were going to do it, I said, now are you going to test this film and it's going to be a downer and we're going to live at the end? Because I want to know now, because that's different, right? And he said, you will definitely go off the cliff, I'm not sure about her. You may push her out of the car. But by the end of the shoot, we had earned the right to go over together, and took a lot of the dialogue that was at the end and put it over a driving sequence and just had just those few lines. And I said I wanted to kiss her, and Gina said okay, and Millie said okay, because we only had one take. Because of course we spent the whole time shooting the helicopters, and as the sun was going down, and it was magic hour, I'm sure you all know what that is, we had just time for one take, so that was it. Thank you very much.
You mentioned a few moments ago about at the time the movie came out, some silly people perceived it as a movie against men. And I'll push back on that in that there's some sympathetic men in there. Your boyfriend, played by Michael Madsen, was a kind, loving character to you. He couldn't commit, but he was a good man. Harvey Keitel, playing the cop, is a good guy. So,
I think Harvey is. Michael's character says he understands, would drop her if he knew that she was raped. So I think he's like stuck in another time period. Harvey, I think, tries. I mean, Chris O'Donnell, who actually had been married to Gina, it's a little fun fact. I think is a good guy, but he's just a jerk. I mean, I think he's just a jerk. But I don't think he's a bad person. And she never disciplined him, so it's also her fault. But no, I think that it was not the movie that was it was not the men in the movie that were the problem. It was the fact that these women had the audacity to have violence as a means of protection, and that pissed off a lot of critics and a lot of people because it wasn't that common to see that on the screen. And I think the fact that it was kind of funny at times too, that screwed up the idea of what genre it was. Because if it's a revenge film and if these women are bitches and they're some kick-ass mean, then they shouldn't be so vulnerable and funny. So, I think it just confused people. When people are confused, they can get nasty. So some people got very nasty. which we didn't expect either. I mean, a lot of it we didn't expect. Ridley certainly didn't expect it. We didn't expect it for the reaction and for the longevity of that film. And like you say, I had one of my kids was pretty young and we were on a road trip. I like to go trips with my kids individually. Now they're grown, it's even better. But we went to the Grand Canyon and walked in on some kind of weekend that was a Thelma and Louise weekend with all these women with their friends in the gift shop. And we didn't make any money from that either, by the way. That public appearance in the middle of the Thelma and Louise Grand Canyon weekend.
They must have loved it.
Yeah, they sure did. But I mean, I love that it's become a language between women and their besties to take trips, and you know, as long as they don't do that line dance and drink too much, then everything's cool. But I love that. You know, I've seen all kinds of animals named Thelma and Louise, and you know, I think that's really cool. But I wish I could say that we made it as a feminist thing, but by the fact that there were two women, it became feminist. It wasn't intended as a feminist thing. But I think that all films, I have a reputation for doing political films, that I really feel all films are political, because they tell you who the bad guy is. They reinforce or they question status quo. So, you know, you have to be careful as an actor, I think, of what stories you're telling out there, because you have the opportunity, like the Nutty Professor, you root for the great girl to be with the fat guy. That's like enormously shifting the narrative, to give you the opportunity to be uncomfortable in that guy's shoes and to see somebody as your hero that isn't the really good-looking svelte guy that's so cool. That's enormously political. So I think that it ended up being more political than we imagined it would, just by the fact that it was two women in parts that had never had really been done before. And there was a lot of talk of how this would lead to many, many more of these films, which it did not lead to. But what did happen, without any credit to us, was that you had the emergence of a lot of really smart female comedians who wrote a lot of really great movies for women that were really funny. The Tina Feys and, you know, that whole Melissa McCarthy, and I think that was the next wave of really breakthrough movies for women that made a lot of money, because that's how they judge success, of course, in Hollywood, is if it's commercially successful. So Thelma and Louise was commercially successful, but also after that came these other films. But there were not a lot of buddy female films. You know, it's not easy to get a film made, especially these days too.
By the way, this is a fan event, so on either side of these aisles here, we want you to line up so that you can ask questions of our
This is my favorite bar.
Here we go. Right over there.
Susan, thank you so much for showing up. You are an icon.
That's what I want on my grave, by the way. No, she showed up.
You are an icon. Thank you again. In this crazy world, thank you for being a voice of reason. Nothing to say on that today. My question is, we're talking all about Thelma and Louise, and Gina Davis was here, she'd probably say the same. But two other iconic movies you've done, Kevin Costner praised you in Bill Durham, and Barry Bosworth said he never worked with anyone nicer and as professional on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. If you had a chance...
That from a guy who signs his underpants. That's important.
So my question to you, all the movies are icon, and you wouldn't change a thing. But if you had to do it over, was there something that was either left out or you wish they had put in any of the three movies, including Thelma?
Oh, and those, I don't, there's tons of things that have been left out of films that I mourn, moments that have been left out. That's why when you do a film, you have to just, it's like having a child, you have to just let it go.
Okay.
And you have no idea how it's going to turn out. And the studio usually markets it wrong. And so the few that actually get seen, I mean, there's so many little jewels films that the studio just didn't believe in or whatever, that never really got a chance to be seen, that I'm sad about. That people sometimes find later and say, oh my God, why didn't we see that one? And the list is too long to go through. But that's why doing theater is interesting, because you actually have responsibility for what the audience and your relationship with the audience. Whereas film, you have to learn to let it go, because you get in a film that's a comedy and the editor has no sense of humor. That's happened. Seriously, or they shoot everything like a car chase, and they're just too afraid that the audience is too stupid to get it. If it just settles down and there's a scene of people connecting, they just don't trust it. They just bang, they have formulas for doing these things. And probably pretty soon it'll all be AI edited anyway.
Thank you again, and again, thank you for being the voice of reason in this crazy world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, actually, I don't have a question. I just want to tell you that what you expressed about how you worked in the movie, what you questioned, what your film previews, and how you saw the story and what you wanted to bring across. I have seen the movie many times. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I can reassure you that what you wanted to come across is how I see the movie and how I read what's happening.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And thank you for your contribution to
That's so cool.
the
Thanks
movie
so
and how it's
much.
written the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have someone over here? They're discussing things. Well, how about in the meantime, I'll ask you this real quick. You ready? Okay, go for it.
First, ditto to what these guys just said beforehand. And so out of all your monumental, iconic movies, what is one movie you would just love to go back and just live again, and why?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Thank you.
Boom!
I don't know. That's such a selfish choice question. I hate to choose just one of my children.
You could choose a couple.
I could choose a couple. Well, I had a blast on White Palace. That was fun. You haven't seen it, obviously. You know what I'm talking about. I love making Thelma and Louise. I mean, there's a difference. Like I found the book of Dead Man Walking, and I produced it, and I saw that all the way through, and I'm very proud of it. I just saw Sister Helen last night, and she's now got the graphic novel of Dead Man Walking. It's also been an opera. It's been a play. So the fact that it started with a great meal in New Orleans of crawfish and a handshake, I'm very proud to have done that. But it wasn't a fun movie to make, because I felt so much responsibility to her, and I loved working with Sean, but it was a painful movie to make. So, I loved that process. I loved what Tim did. I loved working with Sean, and for me, I kind of am a connection freak. I think that the most important thing in a movie is when the audience believes that two people see each other in a way no one else does. And that's the connection that reads sometimes as sexy but it's really just about connection. And I like that in this business. I like joining a family for a certain period of time and getting together and collaborating. And I'm determined to have a good time if it kills me. So I make sure that no matter what the situation, we try to find a way to get along and not have our egos get in the way. And so the process of making films, and I just did a play which was even more crazy, because you're out there without a net and all you have is your other people, right? That for me is really what I love about being in the business. It's a shame that all the other stuff has to happen, like you have to make a profit, and you have to deal with the studio, and you have to
lawyers.
go on junkets for like your life and whatever, but the actual filming of it is, for me, I mean, I'm not choosing just one, but also sometimes when you're dealing with just inspiring people that come prepared and are unpredictable, you know, because then something happens that's magical that you didn't count on. That's when it's really hot, you know, when you really have that kind of a thing happening. And I've been very fortunate to have that with a lot of people that I work with.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Sue. Appreciate all your work and your dedication.
Hi, so first of all, again, really love Thelma and Louise. You're such an icon. Everything that the other people say. It's also
You know, an icon is just somebody who lives long enough that they don't want to call old.
It's also crazy that this film came out, is having its 35th anniversary, and the Rocky Horror Picture Show is having its 50th anniversary.
I know,
Can you
I'm like
believe
only
that?
50.
But anyway, my question is, Thelma and Louise ended up being a feminist film, but would you also say with the kiss at the end that you suggested that you do, it might be also a queer film?
Aren't we all? That's what I would say to that.
Question over here.
I beg your pardon. I just wanted to say, I noticed your pin, not to put a too fine point on it, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the work you do in your art and in your personal life, you know, in news and such, working to just fight injustice. And I'd like to think that, you know, at the past couple of days, we've seen a little bit more hope in the world, you know, particularly out of the Big Apple, you know.
Well, I live in the Big Apple, and I think that Mamdani is important, not just because of what he's talking about doing. And I thank all the young people in the organization that they did and everything. But it's also important to know that if you're fighting for something and not just against something, and you're organized, that you can stand up to dirty big money and make a difference. You know, New Jersey came through, Virginia came through, and it's important. And it's important to have women in positions, but not just because they're women, but because what they stand for specifically is important. And so I think that victory, and what I can just say about activism, you know, people think activists are Debbie Downers because they're always talking about what's wrong, but the reason they do is because they believe it can be better.
And I just want to say that, Ken, you know, it says it all, because you put your name on the line. I mean, I really, really respect.
Thank you.
And you, coming from the life that you had, was there something that made you, you know, feel, you know, that way that you had to, was there something that sparked that fight against injustice specifically?
I was talking to somebody else who was an activist, and he said to me, why does it always have to be us? It's in a way, it's not a choice. You know, when I was little and I thought my dolls came to life at midnight, I rotated their dresses so one of them didn't have a good dress all the time. You know, I was in trouble from the very beginning. But I thank you for that question, because I think everybody gets to have a moment in their life where they make a choice of what they stand for. And I'm grateful to my agency fired me. My agents of 11 years fired me. All my projects went. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to actually live what I believe in. So I'm grateful to that agency and to those women that did fire me for asking for a ceasefire in Gaza. I think that everybody has that opportunity in their life in smaller ways too, to stand up for somebody or to declare your moral bottom line. And being authentic is what we're trying to find in our lives. And sometimes it's really a big when you have a platform, and sometimes it's just little small things. And that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is just to be authentic exactly who we are. And kind. Two big ones.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I'm such a big fan, as most of us here are. As spooky season is ending, one of my favorite things to do during the Halloween season is Rocky Horror and all of the things that come with that. What's your experience? Have you seen any of the crazy, shadow casts and like all the props and everything that
Of course,
happens
I've
with
been
that?
to many, starting way back when Molly Ringwald was 11 and I took her with Nureyev to see it in New York. And also Natalie Portman when we were working together in LA, and the shadow cast there, their mother and father had met during this shadow cast. But I would just like to say, and please take this with all my love, you gotta get more disciplined in the audience. You can't hear the fucking movies.
Oh, yes. 100%.
Completely out of control. It's like sitting in a Tourette's convention. You can't hear. One of my kids went to watched it the other day at home, and said, "Actually, Mom, it's a good movie. I never heard it before."
Right, I took a friend to see it for the first time with a shadow cast and everything, and I had warned her about, the spectacle of it and, how crazy things were going to be, but she was not prepared for not being able to see and hear half of it, and she was just like, I still don't know what happened.
Well, I love the spectacle of it. I love everybody dressing up, and I love all the things being thrown. I have nothing against that. But it's all the ad-libbing in between. It used to be like a mass, it was like somebody
Yes.
said something, there was a response. But now it is impossible. It's just impossible. And I've gone to many. I did one the other day in Vermont inadvertently. I was going to dinner, and there, once a month was the Rocky Chart. So I went in and I said hi to everybody and everything. And of course they were surprised. Because it's in a little town in Vermont. I love that movie. I love the fact that it's encouraged so many people to be who they are, and that, it's kind of gives you the chance to dress up and be accepted without having to go to Burning Man, to savor. So I'm all about it, but please, let's get disciplined in our responses.
Thank you.
Yes.
Last question. Over here.
Hi, Susan. You made so many great movies, so many great roles. One of my two favorite movies of yours is Atlantic City and The Hunter. How was it working with Burt Lancaster and David Bowie?
Burt Lancaster and who?
David Bowie.
Right. Burt Lancaster was a doll. He was kind of stuck in the 50s, but he was so sweet. And I'll tell you one little story about him. I kept in touch with him, and his last movie that he did was what was it called? Was it Irish director? Whatever it was called. I don't remember. He goes, when he dies, he goes out on a Viking funeral. What is that called?
It
Something?
was from an island, right?
Sorry, what?
It was from the island. Was it?
Oh, I don't know where it was filmed. Do you know what it's
I-
called? Anyway, what is it called? Local Hero. Maybe, yeah. Thank you very much. You get a bonus for that. So I called him and I said, "Hi, this is Susan, and I just saw your movie, and you're so incredible, and it was really moving, and I was so happy to see it. Yada 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 yada." And he said, he said, "Thanks, Susan. Nobody ever tells me that anymore." And I said, "Well, you were so great." This was right before he died, and I hung up, and then my phone rang, and he said, "I was so surprised that I forgot to ask you how you are." What a man. Yeah. Bowie was amazing. Everything that you hoped that he would be. Genius and fun. Yeah, I can't talk too much more about our personal relationship, but it was.
That'll be in the memo.
That might be in his memo.
I'm going to close with the last question here as a surrogate for all the fans, including me as a fan. This phenomenon of celebrities like yourself coming to fan events or comic conventions is still relatively new to bringing in talent such as yourself. You know, usually you're on a red carpet, but the fans are, you know, behind a barrier or something. So you're interacting with all of your other fellow actors. Coming to something like this, what's it like for you both right now as well as tomorrow meeting with the fans? What does that mean to you to have that experience?
Well, I have to be honest, initially what happened was, after I was canceled and couldn't earn any money, Chris Sarandon, who I'm still in touch with, does quite a few of these, and he said, you know what, you should do Comic Con, and I'm going to give you my agent. He's a great guy, and he's honest, and I called him, and that was initially how I became interested, because I didn't know anything about Comic Cons. But it turned out that it was such a gift, because when do you get to talk to anybody? When do you find out that me and my mom always watch Little Women every Christmas? When do you have some kid that's on the spectrum give you every single sentence in James and the Giant Peach of the scene with Miss Spidey? When do you get to hear all the stories about Rocky Horror Show? You don't. So it ended up being such a gift, and I'm so grateful to be here.